We all knew this was bound to happen eventually. Hello everyone, my name is the Cyber Prime and welcome to as close to the Plague Lands as I can legally go within Destiny 2. Why are we here on this cold mountaintop, you may ask? Well, I wanted to climb Fellwinter Peak, but it's been closed off ever since the incident. But with Ash and Iron on the horizon, my brain started reminiscing to my unironically favorite part of Destiny 1, Rise of Iron. The medieval DLC where you became an Iron Lord to fight flesh and steel-eating nanites that threatened to consume old Russia and terraform it under the command of Rasputin and/or a fallen splicer. The who controlled what I always found a little murky, but I started daydreaming and that is usually more dangerous. But today I was not behind the wheel. I was behind the steel wok, cooking up some concepts in the kitchen. You see, ever since SIVA was introduced, its unique aesthetic, functionality, and art design appealed to so many Guardians in the community that you could say it spread and replicated like an infection. The uses and power of this amazing Golden Age technology have been established and re-established in the lore, and so I sat down. And sometimes I stood up and I was walking around, but I sat down and stood on business, and I started pondering the question, what if Guardians had a SIVA subclass? I did not actually mean to recreate the Marvel What If intro there, but that is just a happy coincidence. And well, Guardians, you better light the braziers and grab your iron axes, because we're about to give Saladin some PTSD as we discuss concepts for a SIVA subclass. Now, you know the drill. Not that drill. If you enjoy, feel free to leave a like and subscribe, and let me know your reactions to my ideas and describe your own ideas for SIVA subclasses and abilities in the comments below. Let's turn the comment section into a massive mood board for the nanite-themed power fantasy. So, we're all here to see a new subclass, and essentially, see how a new element would function in the game, themed around SIVA. And this was very exciting for me, because I did not have to contain myself to supers and abilities, but I could theorize the entire function and gameplay of a new class with no real teases in the game other than Outbreak Perfected. I know I technically could have done that with Kinetic, but I really had fun imagining the gameplay loop for SIVA a lot more, so this may be a slightly longer video than last time, to give me a chance to explain features where relevant. And once again, before we dive right in, this video is purely for fun. The way I made my ideas yielded in a 96.2% purity of fun. It is not a leak, or intended to be taken seriously in any way by build crafters. It is literally just me having fun imagining concepts, so the intricacies and detailed mechanics and balancing of the builds is not concrete. I will leave the balancing and exact specifications for aspects and such to be developed by those better versed in the wise texts of build crafting than me. And if you have any ideas for additions or specs yourself, feel free to drop them in the comments and we can evolve these ideas together. Also, before I forget, I am in the process of practicing my sketching and animation skills, but for now, in order to help you visualize my ideas, I will provide reference visuals, but someday in the future, I should be able to actually draw my own concept sketches with further practice. Considerable practice. So, I started with Warlocks last time, so I think it's only fair that I start with none. My dear Guardians, before we even chance a look at the incredibly red and black supers and abilities our Guardians would be wielding, we must first explore the humble grenade ability. In order to explain their machinations of my— what? Oh, I miswrote that. In order to explain the machinations of my mind when developing this upgradable battlefield changing and movement granting ability, we must first consider the intended use and function of SIVA. One must contemplate the programming of Consume, Replicate, Enhance. These are three words that we will be embracing throughout the subclass, but the intended function of SIVA before it became this weapon was for construction. These nanites were designed to create spaceships, cities, and technology on far distant worlds that we could barely even imagine, and even frames to help work. Therefore, I thought it was fitting if our grenade ability was used to craft constructs, weapons, and assets that will transform the battlefield, just as the Lord intended with biblically accurate SIVA. This means that the two gameplay elements of SIVA are construction and tick damage nanite swarms that don't slow enemies like stasis, but instead eat into and consume any weapon and technology. This results in general enemies having slowed fire rates, but in Crucible, any Guardian caught and affected by nanite swarms will be dealt damage, but also, gradually, if affected by swarms for long enough, any secondary or heavy ammunition that the Guardian has will have their fire rate slowed and be drained and dissolved as the damage ticks. Sorry, just got distracted there, but that's how it works, a duality of construction and swarms. Now, back to how the constructs will function. Essentially, the longer you play the subclass, the more experience you will get, similar to Strand, and once you reach certain thresholds of SIVA experience, you would unlock new constructs to select as craftables to deploy with your SIVA nanite grenade. Essentially, you would select a construct as your grenade and yeet that nanite bundle to wherever you want, and upon impact, if possible, your selected construct would be built by SIVA nanites. There is one exception to this, but I will get to that later. So, let's explore exactly what you can craft with SIVA, in order of smallest ability cooldown to significantly long ability cooldown. You ready for a list? Because you're getting a list. Probably not the list you might really be waiting for, but I can help you with SIVA, or maybe your shopping list, because I can carry all the bags in one run, baby, so here we go. The grenade ability replaced with Replicate will grant the following constructs across every class. Number 1, initially, smallest cooldown, we got the SIVA node. Generate a small area of effect of SIVA nanites that can be shot and destroyed. Do you remember those kind of weird, like, I don't know, growths of SIVA that had swarms around them in the Rise of Iron campaign? It's essentially one of those you're making on a small scale. Number 2, the Tendril Trap. Slightly longer cooldown period, but still small. A SIVA Tendril will latch onto the floor and slow nearby Guardians, dealing tick damage and nanite damage to any Guardian caught in it, and preventing them from jumping. Next up, we got the Nanite Grenade, the first proper damage grenade. A glowing red ball of unstable nanites that can detonate to create a bubble of nanite swarms that gradually deal damage to enemies. Next up, we got SIVA Turret. In this ability, you get to replicate and create a stationary turret that fires SIVA nanites lasers slowly. Think of the Outbreak perfected like firing lasers, but a lot slower, like instead of brr. Next up, we have the Armored SIVA node, a larger area effect, more health version of the SIVA node that creates the bubble of damage, but takes longer to recharge significantly. Next up, we got the Boost Pad. From this point on, we're getting onto constructs that literally will change how you use the battlefield, which is kind of the main intention. The Boost Pad is a pad that can grant Guardians with a large speed boost and jump boost upon standing on it. Think the Overwatch or Marvel Rivals jump pads in the middle of the multiplayer maps. Next up, we got a Shield Generator. A floating stationary device that grants nearby Guardians extra shield. Kind of like the, do you know the Beyond Light boss shield thing that you shoot? That's kind of the general idea, but made of SIVA. Now we move on to the handful of constructs that would be exclusive to each class, to give that extra unique flair. Swarm Shot is exclusive to Hunters. This grenade constructs a relic slingshot that gives any Guardian who picks it up the ability to shoot 3 to 5 bombs of SIVA nanite at their opponent. However, in Crucible, it must be used carefully, as all players, including enemy teammates, can pick it up. Next up for the Titans, they have the Slug Turret. This is an interactable turret that creates a physical SIVA bolt that has a slow firing rate but fires single heavy damage slugs that explode into nanite bubbles upon impact. And lastly for the Warlocks, the Transmat Portal. This is a device that functions similarly to the typical teleporter from many multiplayer shooter video games. Long recharge time, but allows Guardians to interact with it and warp to another teleporter, wherever the Guardian places both. If one is destroyed, then both are destroyed, and they only last temporarily. Basically, imagine a SIVA version of a fallen teleporter that you interact with once the Guardian placed 2 down. Both teleporters are charged upon a cooldown, showcased by 2 grenades available on your HUD. Now, this I think is just kind of a more tactical ambush kind of ability, but I do think if Destiny ever made longer Crucible maps with push payload style gameplay, I think this could come in very useful. One exception to the construction, as I mentioned previously, would be available to all classes, and it would be called the Tendrail. This would be a fast recharging movement grenade construction ability that allows Guardians to manifest SIVA grind rails beneath their feet that would function and play similar to the skimmer grind mechanic, except Guardians would be able to shoot and aim while using it. It would probably have a large but hopefully fun learning curve. Think of how Sonic can grind on rails, except you are generating the rails wherever you want with SIVA, sort of like Iceman from the X-Men, granting speed boosts at the cost of aim until you practice. It's a bit wild, but the image came into my head and I was like, yeah, this makes total sense, we're definitely gonna include this. Okay, so now that the replicate grenades have been explained, it's time to officially explain the class supers and abilities. So let's enhance our Guardians, shall we? Now, each of the classes were vaguely inspired by the tenets of our SIVA religion, praise the nanite. Warlocks were attributed loosely to consume, Hunters were vaguely inspired by enhance, and Titans were inspired by uncontrollable amounts of replication. Right, let's shake things up and go in reverse order to the kinetic subclass video. Let's start with the Titans, who, surprisingly, were very inspired by Venom from Marvel for their abilities. Don't ask me why my brain made this connection, but I am happy that it did. So first, a unique class ability, because I like them. I think Titans should be able to quickly form a wall that completely surrounds them up to crouch height from all sides, forming a diamond or SIVA outline shape when viewed from a bird's eye view. This wall, as a potential aspect, could also gain a small nanite tick damage defense for any enemies who try to push it. In terms of melee, I believe that the charged melee ability for the Titan would be a smaller, faster, but less damaging echo of the full super, called Relentless Replication. Once activating this melee, the Titan would channel a massive uncontrolled burst of SIVA to erupt forward from their outstretched fist. The nanite would rapidly form into a massive long tendril that would slam forward into enemies, knocking them back, dealing damage, and infecting them with swarming damaged nanites. A good reference for this is the Symbiote Power Punch ability from Marvel's Spider-Man 2, which you are hopefully seeing before me right now. The Titan is essentially channeling such a surge of nanites that they can't form it into anything specific, but rather thrust it towards an enemy in a massive heavy tendril. Now, the supers. Like my previous Destiny concept video, I will be showing you 2 supers for now, and if you want to see more, let me know in the comments and I can always make a sequel. Right, the first super is a roaming damage super I shall name Oncogenesis, where the Titan channels immense amounts of SIVA and has no choice but to expel as much as they can in massive tendrils similar to the melee, with longer reach and immense force. Both arms would be used to throw and craft long tendrils of SIVA during the super, unlike only one arm used during a standard melee. Every successful impact directly infects enemies who are physically hit by the nanite generations. If the impact somehow does not kill them immediately, then the nanites that infected them surely will finish the job. Visually, I think the SIVA tendril rope structures that could be commonly found through the Plaguelands would erupt out and cover the Titan like vines, and large versions of these would be generated by the Titan during their attacks from their arms. Now, the next super, Expulsion, would involve the Titan channeling the same amount of untapped SIVA nanites, but slamming them down into the ground instead. This would summon massive tendrils to erupt from the Titan and travel along the ground, searching for nearby targets to collide with, dealing impact damage and explode in massive SIVA nanite clusters. These long tendrils would look visually slightly smaller than the SIVA limbs that we found throughout the Plaguelands, but travel across the ground with speed, dissolving over time from the back to the front as the tendril traveled, until the dissolving catches up to the front, causing the tendrils to disappear if they don't find a target. Now, I feel that channeling a massive amount of SIVA without the ability to construct them fits right in with the Titans. I'm not saying Titans would be unable to have this amount of control and mental aptitude, as they will their grenade to replicate the construct, see? But the SIVA red crayons that formed some diets helped clue me in on this super opportunity for them. See what I did there? Right, who have we got next? Ah, yes. I see. The hunters are up, and they wish to enhance themselves with nanites. Any guesses as to how this might work? Okay, no answers. Keep your secrets, I'll tell you then. So, for the unique class ability, I believe hunters would allow their own cells to bond with the SIVA nanites on a tiny microscopic level and become a swarm runner. Essentially, this would render the hunter intangible as they sprint for a few seconds, which would also end early if the hunter attempted to shoot or use another ability. This would keep the hunter invincible to all damage except from wipe mechanics, but also, if they run through an enemy, they would then spread damaging nanites into them to deal tick damage. This could also be swapped from a sprint to simply a dodge, but I don't know. I think giving the hunter a quick boost of immunity and speed would be more interesting. Think of it, you would become a dissolving red cloud of the digital plague. That's pretty hardcore. For the melee, I believe it would be fitting for the hunter to channel SIVA into a Psi weapon. For those of you who are not 100% sure what that is, it is the daggers that Elektra or Raphael use, or at least variants of them, in the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. These would be thrown at enemies, and if they hit said enemies, they will infect them with SIVA nanites and do damage. This melee would have 2 charges at a time, and successful kills with the ability would increase the speed that the next charge would charge up. A whole lot of charge. I was originally planning, not to give you a sneaky peek behind the curtain, but I was originally planning to use a nanite whip for this, but I felt it was too similar to both the Strand Super and the Tendrils creation by the Titans, so Psis were another blade-style weapon that fit, and to be honest, I prefer aesthetically and visually to the whip. I'll use, like, a whip or a lasso for a future subclass. Lasso? Lasso. It is a lasso, isn't it? I'll subvert your expectations with it anyhow. You'll never see it coming. If no one has watched Iron Man 3, that was just a really weird pronunciation, and I'm sorry, but that was a reference, I swear. Okay, class ability, check. Melee, check. It's time for the supers. Super 1 has the name Swarm Breaker. In this super, the hunter would channel their SIVA nanites into their body, improving their speed, shields, jumping height, and speed, which I wrote twice, and grant them the ability to leave pools of nanite swarms where they walk. On their hands, large amounts of SIVA would form into their size, but fuse more into their hands, and grow over their knuckles and forearms, grafting into large, almost bestial claws of SIVA nanites that the hunter can pounce forward with on all fours and tear apart enemies, with every hit dealing initial damage and subsequently infecting enemies with the nanite debuff damage. One way I believe this specific super could be evolved with aspects would be for the melee claws to be completely removed, while retaining the movement and shield buffs. Instead, in place of the powerhouse lunge melee attacks, their hunter would continue to use whatever weapons they have equipped, but during the activation of the super, all weapons would gain an additional SIVA element, nanite damage, for the super duration, no matter what previous element they had. So, if you have a heavy machine gun that fires arc rounds, once you pop your super, you've got a heavy machine gun that temporarily fires arc and SIVA nanite damage, baby! I think these options really embody the concept of the hunter using SIVA to enhance their own body and arsenal to the next level. And while the same can be said for their next super, I ain't gonna lie. I thought of the idea and thought it was cool and ran with it. It's like a visual spectacle kind of super more than anything. So, speaking of, the second super for the hunter, which is a blend between a burst and a roaming super, because it's a burst but you do technically move with it, is Noble Corruption. Once this super is cast, the hunter would be unable to move for a second or two, only turning to aim in the direction of the super upon activation, because Guardians, once the hunter channels their SIVA, they use it to craft a katana. Let's go, a katana sword, baby! Super Space Samurai vibes have entered the chat. But in all seriousness, instead of running around with a sword and slicing and attacking, because, let's be honest, that sums up a lot of hunter supers, the hunter would summon the blade and aim for a second or two as they unsheath the blade. Once the blade is fully formed and kind of flicked out because it looks cool, they would sort of anime teleport forward with a slice, dealing immense damage to anyone caught in the straight-line path, before stopping and sheathing their weapon. Once the weapon is sheathed, put away, massive bursts of SIVA nanites will explode behind them along the path, dealing more damage and infecting any nearby enemies with SIVA damage over time. I think this is a fun spin on a sword super, kind of vaguely like Blade in Marvel Rivals, that embraces the high science anime super solo leveling power scaling potential that the Guardians have, and would thrive within an animated series. You know, if anyone from Bungie is listening, a Destiny Anthology animated series would go hard as hell. It would be insane. Imagine seeing a team behind, like, I don't know, the team behind Edge Runners animate a Destiny super. And fun fact, that studio is developing a Transformers anime, so I am considerably excited. Speaking of excited, I can hear the Warlocks frothing at their screens, grabbing them and slamming their heads against them like the rage virus-infected monkeys. Don't worry, we're finally here. I didn't forget about you. I'd never forget about my little perfect jump having Guardians. So, as you can expect, let's start with a new class ability. Instead of summoning a rift, whenever Warlocks access their class ability, they instead summon a small tornado rift of SIVA nanites that deal damage to any nearby enemies, and summon up to 3 floating SIVA orbs that will follow the Warlock until they see a target. Then they will hurl themselves towards an enemy to detonate in SIVA swarm bubbles. When the Warlock stands within this rift, however, their replicate grenade cooldown is significantly reduced, helping them embody the careful architect user of SIVA, who holds the consume command above all else, through increased amounts of constructs to reshape the battlefield and their unique gameplay mechanic that we will get to. However, we must first view the Warlock SIVA melee. This melee would not be one-tap activation. Instead, it would activate for as long as you hold down the melee key, until the charge is run out. Essentially, instead of forming anything specific, the Warlock commands the SIVA within them to become a miniature vortex in front of them, swirling out from their forearm, dealing damage to any enemy caught within its cloud-like grasp. Similar to the weird force laser attack servitors can do if you get too close. Instead of dealing large burst damage, this exposes the enemies and enemy players to increased amounts of SIVA element tick damage, that if not escaped quickly, will rapidly drain health, and any damage dealt from this melee will then reduce the cooldown of the Warlock's replicate construct charge as well. Right, now, the supers. I have 2 ideas. One of which is reasonable, the second of which is not. It would require Bungie to create new assets similar to how stasis can form around frozen enemies for every single enemy type, which I believe would be more difficult to implement, along with the fact that they would, I don't know, have to reprogram NPCs on the fly. So we will start with the more realistically possible option, although I'm sure some detectives among you can already guess where I'm going. And if you said nowhere, then you're correct, because I am still in your walls, and I actually can't get out. Help. The first Warlock super is similar to the Storm ultimate from Marvel Rivals. I'm noticing a trend here that I didn't actually notice when I was writing the script. Marvel Rivals has significantly inspired me, and I have given it the name Swarm Storm. Once the Warlock casts their super, they cause massive swarms of SIVA nanites to explode out from them in a massive SIVA tornado, which can be moved and directed by the Warlock. Any nearby enemies will be drawn into the eye of the storm if they get too close, and enemies caught within will suffer large amounts of damage. One obvious possible aspect to alter this super would be to increase the super duration after every kill is made, but I don't think that should be built into the base super, to find some vague semblance of balancing before I whip out my spinfoil hat for the last super of the video. And speak of the devil, it is time. In order to understand why I think this would even be possible lore-wise, I would like to take you back on a short journey to the final mission of Rise of Iron. In this mission, we got to travel to the original replication chamber of SIVA. Essentially, as far as I am aware, the creation chamber of SIVA. Feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, because I know the raid takes place after, but I always assumed the Wrath of the Machine was just the last remaining stockpile of SIVA that the Devil Splicers had, because I think in the last mission of the campaign, the whole point is that we stop SIVA from being created by blowing it up. Which, now when I say it out loud, is odd, because we literally see an Iron Lord detonating a bomb in the exact chamber we returned to blow up, and it didn't work for them. Maybe it's because we literally caused the entire system to self-destruct, and that's the difference, but if an explosion was all we needed, then that Iron Lord must have accidentally packed a flashbang to her final fight. Anyway, I've gotten distracted again, there's probably something in my brain. Once we get to this chamber, our final face-off, not starring Nicolas Cage, is not against Rasputin. or some strange fallen SIVA mech. It's against the reanimated SIVA-infected corpses of the Iron Lords who were sent to stop it oh so long ago, where SIVA bonded with their flesh and bone to command them from the afterlife. What I am proposing to you, and Bungie, if you would suspend your disbelief for but a moment, is to grant the Warlock the ability to infect enemies with SIVA, and have it reach into their brains and muscle tissue, and control them. Now I know that sounds far-fetched, but let's imagine it anyway. I present to you the final super of this video, Corruption Protocol. In this super, which would not affect bosses, but simply just infect them with a damaging nanite swarm, the Warlock would form large tentacle-like appendages along their backs, with spear or needle-like tips. They would then jump around the battlefield with increased speed and attack enemies. If they attack enemies with their tentacles and deal enough damage, these adds would become infected, gain new SIVA textures over them, and temporarily join forces with the Guardians, turning on their fellow enemies, using their weapons and abilities to do damage, sort of like the turned perk in zombies. And once the duration of the super control has passed, the SIVA lumps on their exterior would detonate into damaging SIVA swarms, if the enemy was not killed during their control. Now, in Crucible, it gets a bit interesting. I believe that if Bungie are slowly navigating towards AI evil guardians, which by the way, I think they are, and I can make a video down the line if you would like me to showcase the evidence for this, but if that is the case, then the temporary mind control would still work, removing players' ability to control their own character for a short duration, and being forced to watch from their own perspective as they hunt down their teammates, and cast supers and abilities they may have been trying to save. Now, the difficult thing, to balance this even somewhat in the Crucible, it would need to have an extremely long recharge time, potentially only being guaranteed to be even castable in a match if the Guardian performs well and gets kills anyway in Crucible. Otherwise, the lobby would just be filled with mind controllers. But that Guardian really sums up my first attempt at designing the foundations for a SIVA-based subclass in Destiny 2. Now, is it perfect and plausible? Probably not, but I had fun creating it. And I hope you have some fun too, listening to me explain in the background as you procrastinated researching that assignment whose due date is starting to get suspiciously closer. And if you didn't like some of these concepts, that's totally fine. Why don't you drop your own ideas of edits to these SIVA supers in the comments? Together, maybe we can generate a more comprehensive subclass concept as a community. But remember, this is all for FUN. Fun! So don't take it too seriously. Either way, thanks for watching, and if you did enjoy, a like and subscribe really makes my day. My dream one day is to reach like, I don't know, like 100,000 subscribers, which of course is very far away, but I know we can make it if we consume, enhance, replicate, consume, enhance, replicate, consume, enhance, replicate. Sorry about that. But that's about it. Let me know if you have any ideas you would like me to try and ponder and design for a next video. And until then, or until my next video, I hope you have a great day. Check out my channel if you want to see a long-running Destiny improv comedy narrative series who is approaching the culmination of over 300 episodes soon, if you include the prequel series. And also check out the plethora of fun random gaming content on the channel, from group horror game playthroughs to random funny moments and co-op chaotic let's plays. I appreciate all the support, Guardians, no matter the form, even if it's just a view. So thank you all so much for watching. Have an incredible day, and I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye. And roll out.